Hello and welcome to the DeFi podcast. We are here in beautiful Buenos Aires for the annual Avalanche Summit. The weather is incredible, the vibes are immaculate, and it is my pleasure to be joined today with Emin Gün Sirer, the founder and CEO of Avalabs. Gün was a longtime professor at Cornell University of Computer Science, where he was a leading authority on distributed systems and blockchain. He is, in my mind, a truly unique individual because his research bridges the gap between theory and practice. So Gün, how are you doing today?
Awesome. It's day 2 of Avalanche Summit LATAM, and day 1 was amazing, so I'm looking forward to a very fun second day.
Yeah, it's beautiful here. Yeah, it's awesome. So I wanted to start first, actually not with an Avalanche specific question, but just a broad, predictions question. You're the perfect person to ask this question because, you were basically in Bitcoin before Bitcoin even existed. You were there for the launch of Ethereum and many other blockchains, and now you've built this, amazing Avalanche ecosystem, which, I can't even, it's 5 years ago when you started, it was kind of hard to envision so many people together in one place, but it's just been this incredible thing. When you kind of think about the next 2 or 3 years in the blockchain space, the contours of what it's going to look like, what do you think?
So there are a couple of trends that are very easy to recognize. I think one of the big trends is the days of technical mumbo jumbo are over. So those games that people used to play where they talk about some cryptographic tools and hold them up as some solution to a long unsolved problem that will come, they'll appear out of the blue and ZK this and VRFs and VDFs, etc. will suddenly solve something. Those days are gone. I don't think people want to hear those stories anymore. I don't think those narratives work anymore. And the days of pretend academics are gone. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's the era of actual delivery, of systems that actually work, that actually solve problems. It's also the era of growth into other markets where we take blockchain, we take it away from an introspective, reflexive, sort of internally oriented thing to other domains. And we show people, by example, how much better we can make their lives with the addition of blockchain technology. So you're seeing this with our branch out into gaming. You're seeing this with our branch out to various different government functions, with the stuff that we're doing with the California DMV, for example, tokenizing vehicle titles. And you're going to see this in other areas. There's a lot more in our pipeline that I know about, and I'm sure that our competitors will finally get the memo, and they too will try to actually make their systems useful to the wide world.
Are there any other themes or predictions that you think like the sort of market at wide is missing?
Is that the market is missing? So look, the market does what it does, and it's insanely smart. Everybody who sort of underestimates what the market is about ended up being just cast aside. Even the meme coin, like we can go in and analyze what happened there, for example. It was a reaction to a bunch of different forces, all the VC coins that were going into the area. So what is the market missing? I think the market is working furiously to bring really exciting new products to market. Yield-bearing stablecoins or new exciting stablecoins are really something that have found product market fit. People understand what they are. They bring dollar dominance to the wide world, and they also bring a lot of stability to people who are outside the US. So that's one area that I'm really excited about. There is a lot more happening in DeFi. I think the basic DeFi tools have been established. The lending services and others are really, really nice. But there's far more that could be happening with the addition of real-world assets into DeFi infrastructure. Physical infrastructure on chain, really, really exciting. Insurance has not found its pace yet. It hasn't really taken off yet. I suspect in the next 5 years that's going to be another area that can grow. There's so much more, like if I were to sort of try to shake down other areas. My conviction has always been that blockchain will grow in those areas that have the least number of incumbents. So we foresaw that NFTs were going to be a big thing. Why? Because there's nobody to oppose the growth of selling little art online. Now we saw meme coins, of course, again, uncontested. We're seeing gaming, uncontested. And so there are all these weird expectations out there. Let me make an anti-prediction. Equities will be the last thing that you will be able to buy online. Apple stock, very, very last thing. Instead, what you should be able to do is, I don't want to buy Apple stock myself. What I think will happen is that the exciting new entrepreneurs with exciting new ideas are going to be issuing their own tokens. And the Apple of 30 years from now will have issued its tokens on a chain someplace. So 30 years from now, the Apple of that time, of course, will be a token that you buy, but Apple stock will probably be the very last thing that gets digitized.
The next generation of companies. And
Well, that you see forming right outside the window over there. Yep.
Moving to like Avalanche 9000, this is the biggest upgrade to the Avalanche ecosystem. Can you just talk a little bit about your view of the real importance of this upgrade and what it means for the Avalanche ecosystem?
Sure. Avalanche 9000 completely changes the way people launch Avalanche L1s. So what are Avalanche L1s? Maybe if people don't know what that is. Very briefly, an Avalanche L1 is a bespoke custom blockchain. It is a way by which people can launch their own chains according to their own rules. Those chains can run their own custom virtual machines. And most importantly, those chains can be powered by their own assets. Those assets can be used for staking. Those assets can be used for gas and a whole bunch of other things. ACP77, which lies at the core of Avalanche 9000, ACP77 is an Avalanche community proposal, a technical spec that changes the dynamics of how these networks are launched. It makes launching these chains a lot easier. So in the old days, Avalanche, what we used to call them subnets back then, Avalanche blockchains were hard to launch. They required a static allocation of validators. Those validators each had to post a bond in AVAX, a security bond. And that, of course, was essentially, it had to be, because when we were launching, we just kind of encoded some numbers into the code. That was 2,000 AVAX. And it kind of made sense, because AVAX was, what, 50 cents back then. And so when the price goes up, then suddenly it's prohibitive for someone in the developing world to launch an Avalanche blockchain. With Avalanche 9000, anyone can launch a chain essentially initially for free. And if you want it to be connected to the rest of the Avalanche ecosystem, it's a tiny, tiny nominal fee. I think it's on the order of about 1 AVAX per month per validator. So it's a very small fee that is required to enable all the functionality of being able to interconnect. So as you go on, as your chain collects more activity and requires more security, Avalanche 9000 allows you to add more security, economic security, to your chain, so you can dynamically post extra bond. But the ramp up is incredibly cheap. So in the old days, with the old set of parameters, it would take around $200,000 potentially, $200,000 to launch a full-fledged L1, and now it costs nothing, just a development laptop and maybe a few AVAX. That, I think, is the biggest change. And the dynamic nature of the security bonds is a second big change, and the fact that the assets are being used on those. Oh, the asset issuance in the old days used to be you could select out of a certain set of parameters, a set of menus, if you would, and now it's completely dynamic, completely up to you. So you get to determine how your asset is created, issued, managed, etc.
Can I just add one question about what you just said, which is that in the past it was 2,000 AVAX per validator that you had now there's some nominal fee after ACP77 that validators are going to have to pay per month. It's a small amount. I think it's predicted to stay relatively stable for a while. But you said initially it's going to be free, or what was that?
If you just want to launch a system on testnet, free.
Oh, I see.
If you want to have your own local private network, free. But if you want to be able to communicate with other people, well, then you need to go through a rendezvous service, and you can't make that free because then it would be DOSed, right? So you need to have a nominal fee.
I know. So you're launching your own chain. You want to be able to have access to all the liquidity on C chain. You pay some small amount per month per validator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so then the other nice thing, of course, I should have mentioned this. Avalanche 9000 makes it really easy to have the Avalanche L1s communicate with each other. So these certificates that are produced by one blockchain are essentially, think of them as messages posted on a bulletin board, and they can be sent to any other chain that accepts them, and thereby they facilitate messaging and invocation of services across chains, as well as asset transfers. So what does that mean? That means you can have your own chain, powered by your own assets, subject to your own rules, but then suddenly you can transfer your assets to the C chain and use them in DeFi. You can borrow against them, you can use them as collateral, you can trade them, etc. So you have everything that the C chain has access to, plus you have the flexibility of your own chain.
So two things that I think you said that are super important. In a world where AVAX is kind of becoming pretty expensive, we're switching from launching your own L1 is like requiring you to have $1 million worth of AVAX upfront in order to get your, previously subnet, now L1, up and running to a few $100 on an ongoing basis for your hardware and a small AVAX fee to the feature, right? So I think one, that's huge because that opens the floodgates for L1s to just start coming in, even if they're a small project and they want to just start testing and seeing if it fits, right? That's a huge unlock. And the second thing is the AWM. How close do you think we are to seeing this sort of vision of all of these different subnets? Sorry. All of these different L1s.
I do that too.
All these different L1s being able to seamlessly interconnect, so you can be on one chain and with this kind of base system of AWM, seamlessly be able to use 5 different chains and not feel like you're actually having to connect to this chain to use the contract on here and then bridge and switch to use a contract on here. Just kind of curious, how close do you think we are to that vision?
That's the vision. I think that's for you guys to tell me. I've been working day and night to make it a reality. Core, the wallet that we built, makes it really, really easy to do multi-chain operations. So if you try to use ancient technology like MetaMask to connect to all the Avalanche L1s, you will still feel the friction. You still have to go into all sorts of menus, set up API nodes, etc., flip between networks, etc. But with Core, this should all be automatic. One great example is the Dexalot network. So it has a very, very exciting architecture, one that is not present in any other system, whereby it straddles 2 networks. It keeps its assets on the C chain, but it does all of its trading on this custom, bespoke, much cheaper trading network. So you pay for trading, you pay very low fees, but where you keep your assets, it's very secure. So so that requires instant and sort of transparent switching between the 2 networks. And Core supports that. If you ever used Dexalot, it was happening behind the scenes. You did not even notice that you were talking to 2 separate networks. So we're going to see more and more of operations like this. And this is all in line with our general thesis, right? So blockchains will succeed when we can make them sort of disappear into the fabric of our interactions online, right? So the people who are playing off the grid, the game, in the background, they're trading or exchanging NFTs. But they should never see that. They should just see an amazing game that has great gameplay. So that's really the vision. To the extent that we can make it happen, we win. And you guys tell me if I'm on the right track. I don't see the other people pushing on this vision at all in other ecosystems. They're going for the L2 thing, which essentially is a punt to different entities, or they're going for the one big super fast chain, which I think is going to not be a very good approach for handling the diversity of the universe. So we're doing something different, multiple chains working seamlessly together. And you tell me where the bottlenecks are in the user experience, but there are at least a few examples where that vision has succeeded.
I agree.
So we at GoGoPo, we're building, I would say, infra or services on top of what you're building to make it seamless. We currently have a pipeline of about 80 L1s that are good projects that have been qualified, that are looking to launch post ACP 77. So I think that maybe confirms the vision. I'm curious, who do you think becomes the competitor to Avalanche in that post ACP 77 world in terms of this app chain narrative? Is it OP Stack? Is it Cosmos? Is it there is no competitor because we're all a little bit different?
We're all a little bit different. So you always have to worry about people digging under you, right? So and that was one of the motivations for ACP 77, one of the motivations for Avalanche9000. So if you look at the Unix wars, remember in the 90s there was a big operating system war, and there were a lot of clunky companies with their monolithic operating system offerings, and the people who won were the open source solutions that were super lightweight to launch, super easy to use, and super cheap. Linux was the big winner. So at Avalanche, we're keenly aware of this, and so Avalanche9000 is a way to make sure that no one can dig under us. So I think we've taken the right lessons from history. OP Stack is something that some people have used. That's fine. It gives rise to highly centralized chains, but not everybody needs to be decentralized. So maybe it's okay for the people who've adopted it. OP Stack also gives rise to fracturing of liquidity, fracturing of the ecosystem. So, I mean, that's, for some people, it's not that important to communicate with other chains, so maybe that's okay for them. Cosmos is an ecosystem that we happen to like very much. They have a lot of technology, but also there are a lot of, I don't see them pushing this narrative as hard as we are at the moment for various reasons. So that's where we are. I think we're unique in our category. We're definitely working really, really hard to make this vision a reality.
Yeah. I sort of see Cosmos as, I like Cosmos as well. I think if you're launching an L1 today, that's the place to go. But I think post ACP77, it becomes Avalanche.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm just kind of building on that with these Avalanche L1s launching. Really curious what kind of verticals you see are going to get the most traction. In a few specifics, are you seeing more like app chains or general purpose, different types of VMs, or even just different like business verticals, gaming versus whatever?
That's such a broad question that occupies my mind the whole time, and for which I have no great answers. So I wish I had clarity. I wish I had that crystal ball, because then we'd put all our chits on that side. So generally, what we're doing is we're just playing the entire field. We don't want Avalanche to be an X chain for any X, right? We're not going to be the gaming chain. We're not going to try to be the DeFi chain. We're not going to try to be the institutional or the enterprise chain. So we're seeing activity across the board. So at the moment, the gaming area is exploding. So Off the Grid just came out with their game, maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, 2 weeks ago. And they already have onboarded 6.5 million new users. It's insane growth. And these are people who are playing the game. They don't realize that they're using a blockchain underneath, and they're constantly using blockchain. So that area is going to go further. There's nothing but fantastic vibes out there for Off the Grid. And so gaming is going to grow for sure. Institutionals are coming. They are very, very slow, but they're also kind of unstoppable. So we very deliberately put a lot of chits on the institutional side, on the enterprise side. So you will start to see walled gardens emerge. You will start to see networks for, let's say, blockchains for, let's say, Wall Street or for Singapore or for what have you, emerge. And that's an exciting area. And governmental uses are coming in as well. So that is slowly rolling off the keyboards, if you would.
Yeah, I think the California DMV is a really great example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people who maybe missed that announcement, California DMV is putting all of the vehicle titles on a blockchain. And so what does this mean? Initially, it just means it's very easy to renew your vehicle title, right? Or it's very easy to transfer. But it has so many other implications. Once your vehicle title is on a blockchain, you could use your vehicle as collateral. You could take it into DeFi. That's a completely different universe. And that's going to take, at least a year or two for the community to absorb, for the layered services to get built on top.
The way that you're kind of talking about making sure no one can dig under you and you can kind of catch whatever use case blockchain really starts to, that's kind of what I've always really loved about Avalanche, because like right now block space is cheap, right? To be honest, like you can do stuff on Ethereum, it's fine, like it's okay. But if we ever do onboard 100 million users or 1 billion users, all these chains are going to start falling over. And actually, last year we had a really interesting example of that with inscriptions, because all of a sudden inscription, no one in the US knows what inscriptions are. It's a big Asia thing, right? And all of a sudden they started using up all of our block space for every chain. And I mean, I won't name names, but some chains fell over. Some chains did not perform well. I mean, on Avalanche C chain, swaps were costing like $70 or $80, but the TPS went through the roof, and the chain didn't fall over. And this is where I feel like we are. Everyone is brainstorming great ideas for what to do with blockchains. Some of them are going to work, and then block space is going to get expensive. Blockchains are going to get bogged down, and the ones that actually have breakthrough new technology are going to perform well, and we're going to see that. This is kind of where I feel like we are. I mean, of course, it's hard to know in advance which vertical is going to do really well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So there are fast chains out there, right? So there are chains that, and where do they get their speed? They get their speed by not doing certain things that other people feel are essential, right? So some chains get, a lot of chains get their speed by not keeping historical data. So, and that's kind of anathema for blockchain development. So those chains kind of could absorb some load when the inscription craze hit. But the way these fee markets work, they're always shaped like a hockey stick. So up until the moment that all of the blockchain is consumed, life is okay. The moment that's consumed and two people are competing for that last spot, the fees start to go up in some parabolic fashion. And suddenly you find yourself in very, very highly expensive territory. When that happens, there's not a single chain that can withstand it. That's just a fundamental fact of life. If you have more demand than capacity, fees will go sky high. So, what can you do? What's the solution? No, none of the second generation coins, none of the second generation systems, and that includes Ethereum, Solana, and the new coming Sui, Aptos, etc. These are all just single chain systems, multi-asset, but single chain systems. They're all subject to that hockey stick. Same as the C chain. If Avalanche was just the C chain, I too would have the same issues, and I did, right? So when everybody was focused on only the C chain, we got the same parabola, and fees went sky high. We didn't keel over; it was very reliable. I'm really proud of that. But there's a fundamental fact of life there. What will save us, and I think what will determine the winners, are going to be those systems that can create more chain making. And so now we're finally beginning to see the fruits of that labor. We're finally beginning to get through to the crypto Twitter community and get them to understand that we are fundamentally different than everybody else out there. But behind the scenes, I've actually shifted my focus to making a single chain go much faster. And so there are a couple of different efforts going on there. We have Hyper SDK, which is a bare bones, think of it as like Lego blocks for constructing virtual machines, and each of which are very, very, very fast, and you can plug and play as however you like. So you can make bespoke virtual machines that are custom tailored to your use case, that are super fast. They don't have any additional accoutrements. If you don't need a particular feature, you don't have to add them. So that's one big push that's happening behind the scenes. And another one is a push towards faster databases designed specifically for crypto workloads. So those elements, once they're in place, will allow us to build incredibly fast blockchains, reaching many, many millions of transactions per second. So that's the push. We actually prioritized, right? The very first thing that we focused on was multiple chains working in unison. And we're sort of at the end of that phase of growth. And I think the next one now for us is just let's get the engineering of a single chain to be so fast that any use case out there, even the insanely demanding ones, finds a home.
I'm sure there's like a number of answers to my next question, but what is the greatest challenge in getting that to work?
What's the greatest challenge in blockchain? So, getting a single chain to go fast.
Yeah.
So look, you can make a single chain go fast. If you want to build a fast chain right now, you could. It's not a difficult feat. It's just basic engineering. Anyone with a basic CS background can excel at this, and you see this in out there. Right, there are a bunch of chains out there that they claim to be fast. They're just mediocre ideas implemented well. And centralized, you compromise decentralization, you compromise record keeping, you compromise and don't keep, you compromise on hardware. You raise the hardware requirements, keep everything in memory, maybe not write as much stuff to disk. If there's a crash, you compromise on failure recovery. So there are a whole bunch of compromises that people make. The right thing to do here is providing a flexible foundation to people where they decide what the compromises ought to be. So I don't know about these other chains where some random guy just went up there with a team of like 5, 10, whatever, 15, and made some compromises for us. And every now and then the system croaks over, dies, and then they say, oh guys, download the new blockchain from Google Cloud. Like that was the recovery for some of these chains for a good 2, 3 years. So that is completely unacceptable. And it's not even in the same class as Ethereum or Avalanche, right? That's just, it goes against what we stand for. So I don't, yeah, so as I said, you can make a chain go fast by making those kinds of compromises, and you'll end up at that spot. There are some areas, some use cases where those kinds of compromises might be acceptable. But it's not for me to decide that for my users. It's for the users to say, this is my use case. My game doesn't matter. I will take my users back an hour. They won't get upset, etc. And so if that's the case, then I want to empower those developers to make those kinds of trade-offs for their use cases. And I want to build for them a platform where that game can coexist with someone else who says, I want super reliability, I want full decentralization, no compromises. So that's the vision. And I think the challenge lies in being able to accommodate both.
How important do you think it is for them not to have to rely on data availability or sequencers and just resolve to their own chain and have that within their grasp?
It's absolutely essential for a blockchain to be its own sovereign thing. If you are dependent on someone else, then you're just dependent on someone. Why are you in this space in the first place? Right? What attracted us to this is the fact that we're building decentralized systems that work without permission, without bottlenecks, without gatekeepers. If you build in a sequencer, that's a gatekeeper. That's a centralized location where people can extract value from the users. And they do extract that value from the users. It's a place where they can do censorship. So that's absolutely just the exact reason, the exact thing that we came to the blockchain space to avoid. So that's just a non-starter for me. Data availability is a huge problem for L2s. And the data availability solutions do not work the way people think or talk about that they will work. What do I mean by that? If you try to create another chain where you store data, you suddenly have a huge set of incentive problems for making sure that that data that you don't want to store on your own chain will be stored on that other chain. Well, how do you incentivize that thing? Well, it turns out it's very difficult to provide incentives for that other chain without making that other chain, the data availability chain, a full general purpose thing. It needs to have its own ecosystem. You can't just, it's not just a storage service. It's actually, it has to be an actual blockchain with actual economically important transactions on it.
And it needs to be profitable.
And it needs to be profitable for that operator. And so suddenly all the problems that you were trying to avoid on your own chain got transferred to the DA chain, and it's going to turtle all the way down. So I don't see that L2 approach leading to anything good. I did mention all of these concerns to Vitalik and to the Ethereum community many years ago. And that was part of the reason why we decided to go down the Avalanche route. With Avalanche, you have a sovereign chain. You create a sovereign chain. You don't have a sequencer. There's nobody in essentially at the bridgehead determining which transactions get on the chain, which transactions get censored. There's nobody who's in a centralized position to extract value. So that's, I think, very important, and it's just essential for anybody who's trying to build a fully, properly decentralized system.
As you're getting into this new project of this launching really fast blockchains, do you estimate that this challenge will be greater or easier to accomplish than, let's say, AWM?
No, it's all about the same level of complexity. So, as with any software effort, the right way to do this is to break it up into smaller pieces. The database component is very different, and the execution engine component is again very different. And but each and every one of them is something squarely within our expertise base. And I think, I don't know if the viewers are aware of this, but many blockchains use the same stupid database underneath. And it's called LevelDB. It was developed by Google for keeping track of your bookmarks in your Chrome browser. So that thing powers Ethereum. That thing powers essentially Avalanche C chain right now as well. And that's just, we can do so much better. You can do so much better if you understand your workload, if you build a custom solution for your workload. So that's one of the things we're doing. And each and every one of these things is going to take a little bit of time to initially just launch, and of course after that to perfect. And but I'm really excited. And this is, again, I think there's a meta lesson here that I hope the listeners will be able to pick up. When you talk to other projects, they are going to typically be holding up some shiny cryptographic object that's going to come in and save the day. I think the last one that I tracked, I no longer track any of that discussion, but the last big thing was ZK this and that, right? And none of the ZK whatevers actually help with scalability. None of those ZK chains are actually usable chains. So we called this, and we decided we're not going to engage in public discourse on why this is a bad idea. We'll just let it play out. And it played out exactly the way we said it would. What you're hearing from me is a very different approach. We're not holding up some kind of a cryptographic solution, some academic mumbo jumbo that's supposed to save the day. It's going to be solid software engineering. We have the best team for it, and it's going to be systems level thinking that's going to save the day.
Let me ask a totally different question. Actually, this wasn't on the list of questions, but I don't know if you got a chance. I know you're very busy. I don't know if you saw the recent HBO documentary on Bitcoin. Did you see this thing?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Were they?
Not.
Okay. All right.
Peter taught us Satoshi.
Yeah. So they basically. Well, what's funny is HBO said that they were going to not only did they know and were about to reveal who Satoshi is, but they also said they were going to change the outcome of the U.S. elections, which I was like, okay. Yeah, so a bit of marketing, of course, but okay, if you had seen it, I was going to ask you.
So I followed it. I explicitly chose not to watch it. I'll say just one thing. In the old days, we used to have very few news channels, and you had to be vetted to be a journalist, and the news channels had accountability. And if they put up complete bullshit, we had channels by which we could go there and say, New York Times, you posted this, but this is all made up crap, right? So, and that actually led to, would lead to cascade effects, like people would not get promoted, people could get fired for putting up crazy stuff. In the age of like Netflix documentaries or whatever, HBO documentaries, a TV producer is just, I don't know what the hell they do, like they're just clickbait machines, right? I mean, one day they're filming, Love is Blind Dubai or what have you, and the next day they're trying to do a Satoshi documentary, and they are completely bereft of everything that came before them. Those claims are ridiculous. And I will say this as well, Satoshi chose to be anonymous. Anybody who hints at being Satoshi is obviously a charlatan. So there is that. And that whole show I decided not to watch. It's just a waste of time.
Yeah, I got about 20 minutes in.
Right.
Yeah, I got about.
Greg, right? That also took. It took so many years to sort of push that turd out of the system, if you would. I don't know how else to say it, but he damaged so many relationships. He damaged the space so much, and but it was so obvious, and yet it was so hard. So imagine a slightly more sophisticated people trying to do scams like this. I mean, these are all just scams of different kinds.
I think the mystery is kind of beautiful as well. It's like kind of a nice like blockchain, like it's like the legend of blockchain sort of thing.
Absolutely, and the man wanted to be anonymous. It's just so wrong to try to go and destroy that, right? The greatest gift anyone can do is give you something and not ask for anything in return, especially to not ask for credit or identification. So what the hell are you doing getting obsessed with his identity, trying to uncover it? Let it be. He gave us a gift. Let's take the gift, make the best of it, and move on with it.
I would actually end with like a super, I guess, a serious question. I think you've answered this before, but when I look at everything we're building, I feel like we're really like at the beginning of the journey, and I can't imagine what's going to be happening in 20, 25 years. I think it's going to be beautiful. My one concern is quantum computing, breaking encryption. I know you've talked about this before, but I'm always sort of like concerned about it because I'm investing my career in this industry, and I'm like, is this gonna last, or is this? So I'm just curious if you could sort of update us on your current thinking on
quantum.
Is that a real problem?
Sure. So quantum is going to be a problem at some point. Just 2 days ago, on the flight over here, I was hearing about an RSA break in China using quantum computing. So we will hear more and more and more of these kinds of accomplishments. So what does this, let me just get to the answer. No, quantum computing does not mean the end of blockchains, does not mean the end of cryptocurrencies. Why? Because we have quantum computing safe techniques. So there are lattice-based cryptographic cryptographic systems that are not using the kinds of efficient number tricks that we currently use. They're not using ECDSA, they're not using RSA. They use these lattices for computing essentially encryptions and decryptions. And those are slightly slower than ECDSA, slightly bigger. The encrypted entities are slightly bigger, about 5x, 6x, maybe 8x bigger, but otherwise entirely usable. So it's not like Things still take on the order of milliseconds to encrypt and decrypt. So that means that at any time when quantum computing becomes a real threat, we can just switch to lattice cryptography and we're done. So there's an issue about how you change from the historical stuff to the new stuff, but that too that's an engineering problem that's solvable. And also something that the public does not maybe realize, let me just mention this as well. So suppose that we have a chain, let's say Bitcoin, right? Suppose we have a chain that uses, whatever it is, that uses ECDSA, okay? And suppose that today there is a break. There's somebody invents a quantum computer that can break ECDSA of the exact same key length that's used in Bitcoin. And it takes them, umpteen weeks, days, etc., to break it. Well, that's still not sufficient to break Bitcoin, because the way the Bitcoin chain works and the way Avalanche works, the way I believe everybody else works, is the information required for the break is not available until there's a transaction that consumes a UTXO. So you have to see the public key, and then having seen the public key, you have to start churning on it. Sorry, let me just try to describe it a little bit more clearly. Typically what happens is money is sent to an address, and the address is the result of a hash. So, and suddenly when somebody is about to use that money, they reveal what was the pre-image of the hash, they reveal the public key, and then they provide a signature. So let's say I send some money to Bill. Bill then is spending it. When Bill is spending it, he has a transaction in his hand. He has signed it. What you need is the kind of quantum computer that can look at this transaction, figure out, see his public key inside, break the encryption, and submit an alternative transaction that supersedes what he sent before this one is entombed in the blockchain. And for Bitcoin, that's about 10 minutes. So if a break for ECDSA that would normally crash Bitcoin, that would normally allow somebody to figure out the private keys for Bitcoin, that takes days to do, doesn't affect Bitcoin. It really has to be so freaking fast that it can supersede it in real time. So that's quite far away. So we have at least 5 to 10 years, in my opinion, before quantum computing is even a threat, a realistic threat, and we will see it coming. There will be all sorts of signs, and there is already existing, well-established, fairly efficient, not as efficient as ACDSA, but fairly efficient technologies that we could switch to. Have no worry on the quantum computing side. Now the regulatory side is a different matter. So no, even that's a different podcast. But even then, I think the progress of these technologies are completely unstoppable. So maybe that's another thing that maybe I would like to touch upon. So what is this? This is October, right? October 2024. The elections are coming up. They're high on everybody's minds. Every now and then I find myself wondering who's going to win, what's going to happen to the regulatory space, etc. But every time I spend a little bit of time thinking about this, at the end I go, damn it, it's not even worth thinking about it. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Maybe we have a fast run up, or maybe it takes a little while. But 5 years from now, I'll be here. You guys will be here. The space will be here. This progress is unstoppable. So even the regulatory attacks on this space are not going to be a hindrance to us.
I agree. I think that's an important message, actually, that the fundamentals at the end of the day are almost...
Yeah, you can't stop these people. Like, you cannot. Like, what are they going to do? Suppose you banned it. Suppose you could ban it, which they can't. Well, suppose you banned it. Okay, 5 years, 10 years, and then these people will vote. Like, bring this shit back. It was so much better than whatever crap we have. I'm going to go to Charles Schwab and use, no, that's crazy. I will just go...
Like, we recently spoke about the fact that in China, they officially banned crypto. Yeah. And, Binance went on to have $80 billion of crypto transactions happening in China.
That's right. Unstoppable.
Switched how they were doing it. They were just a little bit more private about it, but it continued. Of course. You can't really stop it.
Okay, well, I think it's a good place to end it. Thank you so much, Gün, for the first of 17 podcasts, which will be out. Yeah, no, it was a real pleasure to see you.